Silent Separation by Guman, Chapter 10.2 No Escape. Mushan pursed up her lips and raised her head to look at the high-spirit Yichen on the electronic screen. Yichen really talked about his past to her, probably because she was only 23 years old at that time, so she seemed like a little sister to Yichen, who had such a vast life experience. Only once, Yichen by chance talked about it. I used to have a girlfriend at the university. She was very intelligent, very beautiful. He stopped, his voice overwhelmed with feelings. At that time, Mushan, who did not understand the reason, immediately replied, "My ex-boyfriend was also very outstanding." "Oh," Yichen smiled, "in that case, your ex-boyfriend isn't as lucky as me." Mushan could still remember the expression in his eyes to this day. Full of contradiction, loneliness, and arrogance appeared at the same time in his usual calm eyes. In all these years, she did not see any woman in Yichen's life. Mushan dazedly thought perhaps he was like her, all alone, unable to let go of that person from the past. As the speech was coming to an end, the host came out. "If we finish now, will all of you feel kind of unsatisfied? Will you have any regret?" Many voices shout yes. "'Tis next, it is question and answer session. This time it's half an hour, so seize the moment." The atmosphere started to burst with noises and excitement. One after another, the students stood up to ask all kinds of trickery and strange questions. Allowing the student to freely ask questions best reflects a person's creativity and agony. Obviously, Yichen excelled at this. His answer, full of wit and humor, elicited a burst of applause from the audience. Today's speech, regardless from which aspect, Yichen was truly the pride of C University. These guys asked very boring questions, continuous technical questions about IT, bored the girls in the audience as they were not interested in computer technology. At this point, the microphone was passed to a girl. The female student stood up and then cleared her throat. "Mr. Yin, I want to clarify that this question isn't for me, but for my classmate who sent a message from outside the auditorium. She said that if I can help her ask this question, she'll treat me to dinner, so for my free dinner, please answer my question." "Of course," Yichen said pleasantly. He elegantly lifted his hands and made a go-ahead gesture. "Great." The girl tactfully paused and then waited until the audience calmed down. Then she asked loudly, "Are you married, and do we still have a chance?" Because of this question, the audience grew noisy. The male student whistled, cheering for the girl's courage. However, in such a lively atmosphere, the man on the stage, who has been at ease all along, has clearly lost his concentration. He still appeared like before, but his train of thought seems to have disengaged. This person apparently was brought to another world by this unexpected question. Forgetting he still had audience, the student who saw the close-up at the big electronic screen outside the auditorium could even see the sadness that could not be hidden away in his eyes. Gradually, the auditorium quieted down, and the students looked at each other in complete silence. The girl who asked the question started to appear uneasy. The host thought this question intrudes on Yichen's privacy and quickly came out to save the day. The question asked by the female student is about his private life. "You are not a paparazzi who disguised herself and sneaked in here?" There was a faint laughter from the audience. The assistant standing next to Yichen said something to him, and he recovered himself immediately. He made a gesture to stop the host. "It is quite all right. I just suddenly thought of my wife, who I haven't seen for some time." The audience failed to understand clearly, so Yichen answered with certainty, "Of course I have married." There were so many people inside and outside the auditorium, but probably only Mushan understood the true meaning of the speaker's words. Half married. Mushan also told Yichen that before. Half married, but only in name, and it was no longer true now. The speech was drawing to a close. The last image on the electronic screen showed students rushing towards the stage surrounding Yichen, who stood in the middle. Then the broadcast stopped and became a video about the centennial celebration of C University. People gathering outside the auditorium gradually dispersed. Mushan also followed the crowd to leave. Suddenly, she remembered when she flew back to China. Yichen saw her off at the airport, and at the last remark he made before she boarded the plane, If you are not returning to the US, then we don't keep in touch for the time being. Actually, it was not without regret. They could have been very good friends if so many things did not happen. Mushan's chest felt tight and her head felt dizzy. In this defenseless and sunny afternoon, those emotions buried for a long time were reawakened by Yihun's appearance. Each seems like a nightmare reappearing. Newly arriving in the US, she felt terrified because everything was unfamiliar, and she also felt ashamed due to the discrimination from her poor command of English. Because the accent was radical, she gradually grew accustomed to remaining silent. After more than 2 months in the US, Mushan felt apart when she learned about her father's suicide due to guilt from the newspaper. At that time, everything felt like a demon waving a net. No matter how she struggled, infinite despair as an escape was not possible. Two tiger running fast. Suddenly, the ringtone Two Tiger pulled Mushan from the past back to the present. Mushan chose this childish song for Yichen's phone when he was busy with his work, and she played on computer games with his phone. And although Yichen frowned for a while after he heard the song, he did not change it. The phone rang twice before she answered. Mushan? Yichen's voice sounded deep and low like always. Mushan did not know why. She suddenly felt overwhelmed with emotions. It seems as if a warm wind blew through her heart. The whole world became tranquil and kind. Her eyes welled up. Yichen, I miss you very much. Mushan heard herself saying that, or rather, it was another Zhao Mosheng who was in a foreign country telling Yichen that. I miss you very much. Yichen, did you know that? I once stood on a street in a foreign country full of people with different skin color. Even someone looking a bit like you could not be seen. Finally, I can tell you now, I miss you very much. The tears that could not be held back rolled down her cheeks. They were silent on the other end of the phone. Only their quiet breathing was heard, mixed with car horns from the distance. After a moment, Lao Yun's loud voice could be heard from the phone. Yichen, why did you stop walking? Moreover, standing in the middle of the road. Yichen snapped out of it and then coughed. I see. The great lawyer paused and then stammered. Where are you? Mushan looked around. I don't know. After the speech finished, she followed the crowd, not paying attention to where she was going. Are you lost? No wonder. Yichen's voice was hoarse. Forget about it. Just go directly to Yichen Hotel across the university gate. I'll wait for you in front of the hotel. Yichen Hotel. For some reason, someone took the table Lao Yun reserved. The manager apologized profusely and said that he would make another arrangement as soon as possible. The group did not really mind as everyone sat and chatted in the lobby while waiting. Besides Sumin, Lao Yun also invited several close friends. After graduation, everyone dispersed in different directions, so they only managed to meet up a few times. Finally, there was a chance to catch up with everybody now. Sumin took the opportunity to introduce a female lecturer who she had invited to meet Yichen. The leading man appeared a bit distracted, but judging from the female lecturer looking shyly at Yichen from time to time, Sumin was secretly proud of herself because she was probably at least half successful this time. While chatting, Shinhe, who sat opposite the window, suddenly stood up and looked outside the window. Yichen, who sat across from him, subconsciously turned around to see a big truck nearly missing Mushan. She tried to stabilize herself and stand firmly, her face pale with shock. That was a close call. Shinhe was still stunned. Yichen, your wife is terrified. She can cross the street without paying attention when the light was still red. Before he finished talking, Yichen already stood up and walked out with a cold face. Sumin could clearly see the woman's face across the street and widened her eyes. She also heard clearly what Shinhe had said, so she turned to Lao Yun and asked, Wife, what does that mean? Lao Yun laughed sneakily. A wife is a wife, not a girlfriend. The young female lecturer looked puzzled at Sumin, probably wanting to ask, Why did you introduce a married man to me? Sumin suffered in silence. They glared ferociously at Lao Yun. Yichen took a hold of Mushan's hand and walked in front of her. He immediately let go of her hand as soon as they had crossed the road. They stood next to the flower torrents but could not hear what they were talking about. Looking at Yichen's imposing manner, as well as Zhao Mosheng stopping her head low and lower, he probably was lecturing her. I really missed this. Shinhe started to smile. He had not seen such a scene in a long time. At the university, Yichen acted older than his age. He usually handled things maturely and really got angry with anyone, except with Zhao Mosheng. He would always lecture her for a long time if she did something wrong. It is still her. Suman shook her head, not knowing if she should feel happy for her junior or feel not worth it. Back then, there were so many talented and beautiful girls in our faculty of law who liked him, but he liked a girl from another faculty. I have told him it is fine if he likes someone from another different faculty, but at least choose the most beautiful girl. Only then would that be fitting with his status as the #1 gift scholar of the Faculty of Law. But he chose an ordinary girl. Back then, when Zhao Mosheng relentlessly pestered Yichen, most people in the Faculty of Law watched the chase with the mentality of following the crowd. No one thought Yichen would accept her, because he has always rejected many girls better than her. Hence, when Yichen brought Zhao Mosheng to attend lecture and self-study class, many people were taken by surprise. Perhaps many girls secretly regret that they were not a bit more persistent. Later, when Zhao Mosheng went to the States and Yichen was single again, there were many new students whose enthusiastic level could match that of Zhao Mosheng. However, Yichen always managed to get rid of them in 2 or 3 days' time. Once, Suman could not help but ask Yichen, "You hate it when girls pester you, then why didn't you hate Zhao Mosheng?" Suman regretted her outburst being too rude and impetuous, till she immediately left to brush it aside, not expecting Yichen would reply. "That is different." At that time, Yichen answered briefly in a flat tone. Suman could not think where the difference was. Perhaps he gave Mosheng a chance to pester him, but did not give the other girls the same opportunity. After hearing what she said, Lao Yun said seriously for once, "A love relationship is like drinking water. The person who drinks it knows best whether the water is hot or cold." While everyone was still chatting, Yichen and Mosheng have arrived. Yichen still looked annoyed. As for Mosheng, she probably has been scolded miserably. She greeted the crowd in a very low voice without any enthusiasm. Mosheng was a frequent visitor to the Faculty of Law, so she knew Suman. She looked at Suman and smiled faintly. Suman made a reluctant noise. She did not have a chance to reply because a loud cry of surprise interrupted her. "Mrs. Yin?" The loud and passionate voice of the speaker caused the noisy lobby to quiet down. People were amused by the accent of the man when he spoke in English. The partly middle-aged man was not in the least conscious that everybody's attention was focused on him. He walked happily across the lobby to stand in front of a stiff Mosheng. "Mrs. Yin!" The middle-aged man was a little incoherent from excitement. "I didn't expect to see you here. Did you return with Mr. Yin? I'm Lin Shenhe, president of Danshan Company. Do you remember? Last year in the U.S., I was honored to be treated so well by you and Mr. Yin. This time, since you and your husband have returned home, you must let me return the favor by hosting you." Mosheng was stunned, her hands and feet growing cold. She could still remember this middle-aged chubby man. His company and Yinhun's company did business together. When he visited the U.S. last year, Yinhun had hosted a dinner at their home for him and his wife. But why did she have to run into him here, at the worst time in the worst situation? Mosheng felt Lao Yun and everyone else looking at her in suspicion and also surprise. She did not have the courage to look at Yichen's expression. Just recently, she only started to feel to have a little bit of happiness. Very feeble would it disappear so quickly. The fearful feeling was spreading bit by bit to all corners of her body. However, in the next moment, a warm and strong hand took a hold of her trembling hand. this hand that had just pulled her across the street in anger. It was now full of reassurance, strength, and collapsing her hand. Mushan slowly turned her head. Yichen was looking at her. His eyes were calm but filled with pain. He had guessed what had happened. Indeed, Mushan heard Yichen's clear and calm voice. "I'm sorry, now she is not. You have the wrong person." Mushan interrupted before Yichen could finish talking. He paused and his eyes appeared puzzled. Mushan gently pulled her hands out of his hand and repeated her words to President Lin. "You have the wrong person.